Hi everyone, this is Razvan coming to you again with another presentation. This time I'm doing the presentation on the recent art show, which I curated for Flambeau Noir, which was managed by Jeremy Crow. We got a lot of amazing art and amazing artists. I'm really happy the way it turned out. The Lightbearers Art Show, which you can still check out, and I'll put the link below. You guys can go and check it out. It's still up. It's gonna be for a while. So, but I wanted to do a presentation to talk largely about my work that is in the show as an artist. And I also wanted to give a bit more context in regards to the shamanic, techno-shamanic, or cyber occult, call it what you will. The way I present my work with this kind of that's what people have noticed. People have called it techno-shamanic and cyber occult and stuff. So that's why I'm using these terms. But I wanted to give a bit more context to explain why is it like that and what's my inspiration and where do I come from as an artist. So let's begin. Let's describe the artwork. So the first artwork that I have in the show is a piece called Cybernaut, right? So Cybernaut, you can see it's like a face here, right? And then you see a hand, and it looks some kind of either a man in a costume. It's not very clear what it is. So one way I was gonna do it, and that was my initial idea. That's why it looks so abstract. It's in between real and abstract. You don't know if it's actually a face here or what is it, right? And you can see it's a hand here, but it's very gets very abstractized, and it becomes almost like it melts into this kind of like cyberboard. So the yeah the mask, you see he's got almost like a mask on his face, and is almost resembling a like in a dream, because I that's why I put this work specifically into the show, because a waking dream, the idea that when you're in a dream, you meet all sorts of like people or things or creatures, whatnot, but many a time when you come close to them, you realize that they change. They're like they switch is not with the person who you thought they were, right? So I'm using that idea here into my work, where a face of somebody can be somebody else, right? It's not very clear, so that's why it's abstract like this. uh, so it's like a waking dream, right? It's a cyber world, and in the cyber world, right, it's our world, the real, tangible, and it's also the virtual, the cyber world, where it kind of functions like a shamanic world. Because back in the day, the shamans, would go to this other world either by taking drugs or by, meditating or chanting or all sorts of methods. These methods would bring them into a different world. And from that world, they bring answers back to the humans, from the gods, their gods. And many, many cultures have this um, in their history, right? So that's kind of the idea right here. It's a shamanic. That's what people call it techno occult, right? Or techno shamanic, or right. So that's kind of the underlying idea why. So that's this piece, right? So you see it melts. It's almost like you don't know, it's not clear, but it's a human, right? It's like a human. You see the hand, you see another hand here, like a glove maybe, and it becomes like a glitchy kind of, and with these colors, which are really particularly of, motherboards or, computer parts or whatnot, right? Kind of reminds that. That's why I call it cybernaut, right? And I equated the cyber world with a dream world, because in a sense we are in a virtual world. It is kind of a dream world where things can become anything, right? Is because in reality things are made of matter, right? But in the dream world, it's made of things that are, information from your own mind. In the same way that in a virtual world, in a cyber world, it's all made of zeros and ones, because that's all we see. All the images and sounds. At the end of the day, it's just zeros and ones, right? It's just information. Not to say that the real world doesn't have information, because everything has information, right? The world is it's literally made of information, but it's a lot more. Whereas in the virtual world, right, the information it's very little compared to the real world, where the information is boundless, right? So let's go to the next work. The next work was something called the shaman's vision, or the vision of the shaman. And yeah, and it's self-explanatory work, right? A recollection dream. The shamans use the dream world, as I said before, to connect with the other world, the spirit world, the nether world, the splitting the image of the self, right? So you can see here that the shaman has two. That's kind of the idea. What I create two images, and it's the dreamy like, and these geometric shapes here are represented, or different dimensions. So as the shaman is traveling to different dimensions, his inner self is splitting up, right, between the real self here stays behind, and the right, and then the part that goes to the dreaming world, the other world, is it's got this this his second self, so to speak, right? So the image is self-explanatory. It's a bit more simpler than the previous one, where it was more abstract, right? Just because of the image, you had to kind of figure out the shapes and whatnot, right? And I placed the two together because of the colors, right? It's like I tried to make the whole gallery kind of like from I put the monochrome with a monochrome and the colors to kind of have a nice ambiance. As the eye and the camera moves around, it creates an ambience, and I try to do that. So that's why I put my work next to this one, a shaman's vision, right? So this is it's very self-explanatory. Smoke, or this digital here is supposed to represent some kind of a smoke, or in the different planes, and so that's kind of the idea, right? Glitches, and the idea of traveling to another world, right? So shaman's vision, I call this piece. There's different versions that I created, not just this one. I like to, like I said before, I think that for a piece of art, you can create in multiple ways, not necessarily just one way. So next work were the Manads. The Manads are the were female followers of the Greek god of wine Dionysus. The word Manad comes from the Greek Manaides, meaning mad or demented. During the orgiastic rites of Dionysus, the Manads roamed the mountains and forests, performing frenzied ecstatic dances, and were believed to be possessed by the god. While under his influence, they were supposed to have unusual strength, including the ability to tear animals or people to pieces. And that's what happened to Orpheus, right? So I'm Romanian myself, and a part of the legends, a lot of the legends are going back to I guess my ancestors, right, which would be the Thracians, the Dacians, the people that were around the Greek lands. Most of the mythology that people know in the West comes from in Western Europe, right? Comes from the Greeks, and then it was taken by Romans, and it was mixed, of course, with the Egyptian and the Middle East, Persian and whatnot. But one that is often overlooked is the people that surround the Greeks, and many of these mythologies that people in the West believe to be Greek, they were actually not Greek at all, such as Dionysus and Orpheus, both with Thracian origin. So Thracian, our ancestors, and part of our land, where the Romanians were the Dacians or the Gete. These people go by many names. the Scythians, the Phrygians, they have a Kostoboch. There were many tribes, right, and they go by many names. And they were called many names by different people, right? But the Greeks are the ones who mostly documented these people, and a lot of their stuff has been lost, a lot of the information. But there is still writing from their olden world. But the West hasn't discovered a lot of it. So anyway, that's for it's a lot more information, and that's for maybe for a different video. But here we have the dancers, the frenzied. It's very similar to a shaman who would bang the drum, or he would take some mushrooms or whatnot to induce like a dream state. Here we have these figures, these dancers who were drinking, and they were frenzied, and they were creating. That's what they're to go into the other world, right? The same, very similar idea. So here you see, that's why I made. They have like double eyelids and triple eyelids. Most of these characters to indicate that they are being drunk. They've been they are they're not themselves, right? They're traveling somewhere, right? So multiple eyelids of the characters, the cut up superimposed images of their faces, and the lines indicating movement are to suggest this drunken frenzy of a dance. So this is like a dance. I made it digitally, and it looks like a I guess like a digital image, a glitched image, right? But it was the same. It's the same thing. I guess it would be the virtual, the digital version of what he would be back then, right? So I tried to transfer that into different images, into a different from one to another, right? So yeah, so you have the different colors here, the movement, right? It's indicating movement and dancing and going crazy, and that kind of thing, right? So that's why I chose this piece, right? And of course, the background as well. They're saying they're Greek, but like I said, Orpheus wasn't was Thracian, and so was Dionysus, and so were many other Greek heroes and gods, right? They were borrowed from other cultures. So okay, next piece of work is a piece. I call it the God and the Machine. God with a of course, with not with a capital, right? Kind of speaking about this idea of how human beings, find gods everywhere, and also they also find gods, of course, in the machine, right? So my original post included a poem by the Romanian poet Nikita Stănescu, and it says like this. I'm just gonna recite it to you guys. A god was put in every tree stump. If a stone split, a god was quickly brought and put there. It was enough that a bridge fell down. A god was quickly put in its place. Or that a hole appeared in the highway. A god was inserted there. Oh no, do not cut your hand or leg by mistake or by design. They will promptly place a god in the wound, as in every place, as everywhere. They will place a god there for us to worship, because he protects whatever disunites itself. Take care, warrior, do not lose an eye, for they will bring a god and set him in your socket, and he will stay there petrified, and we will move our souls to praise him, and you'll put yourself and you yourself will steer your soul in praising him as you would strangers. So this is a poem by a Romanian poet Nikita Stănescu that I kind of try to explain the image with a poem, right? And it's very, you can see it's very abstract, because this god is, it's, you don't really barely figure it. It's a human face, and he's got a little up here. You see there's the smaller face here, and there's the colors, and it's a bit faded, and it's a bit, you don't really make up what it is, and it's got a beard, but it's not really a beard, and the colors. So the idea that this god is, it's hidden somewhere in the machine, right? And we know now in popular culture, how this idea is very popular and prevalent, right? You have Ghost in the Machine and countless movies that, and horror movies and whatnot that talk about this kind of idea, right? Matrix as well, right? Matrix was mentioned by Jeremy SMQ in their presentation. So I'm kind of going along these lines to give more context about my work and kind of like elaborate on some of the ideas with my own personal history and my own knowledge. So yeah, so these are the works, and as in regards to what I was saying before, in terms of cyber occult, or right, there's a deep connection that perhaps people in the West are not aware. So I'm going to develop that. I'm going to talk about that now. So yeah, so uh, we know that the person that came up with cybernetics. He basically created cybernetics. He was a Romanian guy, and he wrote a book in 1938. Cybernetics is the study of feedback and derived concepts such as communication and control in living organisms, machines, and organizations. Contrary to popular misconceptions, cybernetics is not about computers as much as computers are about cybernetics. Its focus is how anything, digital, mechanical, or biological, processes information, reacts to information, and changes or can be changed to better accomplish the first two tasks. Cybernetics takes as at its domain the design and discovery and application of principles of regulation and communication. Cybernetics treats not things but ways of behaving. It does not ask what is this thing, but what does it do and what can it do? Because numerous systems in the living social and technological world may be understood in this way, cybernetics cuts across many traditional disciplinary boundaries. The concepts which cyberneticians develop thus form a meta-disciplinary language by which we may better understand and modify our world. So this is kind of a definition of cybernetics was based on psychological thought and the processes underlying on their esoteric side, which is why the first book on cybernetics, titled Consonantist Psychology, is compared by some to the occult book The Kabbalion. So many people, that's not just me saying it, that there's other scientists and other people saying it, that the first book on cybernetics, upon which things like artificial intelligence, things like the virtual reality, things that are very, very common, very popular, and very well known, and they're everywhere. And today's age, they're based on psychology, right? And the first book to deal with that was a book called Consonantist Psychology, a book which is not available in English. But it's not available in English, but only in French. He only published it once. He only published it a couple of times, but because of the war, his book never got famous. And after the war, somebody else, Robert Veen, he picked up and his ideas, and he's credited as the inventor of cybernetics. But now, over time, people realize that actually the Romanian guy, Stefan Odobleja, was the real person who discovered cybernetics, right? So me as a Romanian, it was very hard to access this book, but I kind of looked around and I found this book, and it looks a lot like the Kabbalion. The scientists and the people saying that they're right, right? So I'm just gonna show you a bit of parts and a bit of things from this book. Yeah. So to my mind, the spiritual things and the things that we see in the real world, right, that we talk about, and they're metaphysical, considered to be in the real world, ghosts, spirits, call them what you will, they transfer so well into the virtual world, which kind of doesn't make sense because, right, it's supposed to be zeros and ones. It's all made by humans, so it's not supposed to be these beings are not supposed to be haunting our computers, right? Since they're let's say belong to nature, not to something made by humans, right? But there is a connection, and schizophrenics. people who are schizophrenics usually think that, right? That the computer is haunted, the radiator, the fridge is haunted, stuff like that. But truly, the way cybernetics was set up in such a way that allowed for these things to happen because it's based on human psychology. So the to my mind, spiritual things based on the image, like ghosts, like I said before, or spirits, translate so well in the computer world because they're based on numbers and letter. The father of cybernetics, Odobleja, Stefan Odobleja, um, gave many examples. And for example, this is a quote: "The image evokes the spoken word. In its turn, the spoken word evokes the image." So this is, it's one of the quotes from his book. So yeah, so this is the only thing, the only I guess equivalent I could find in English of his book was something called Consonantis Psychosomatics, which is somebody translating his ideas into English, kind of a succinct presentation of his ideas, not his full original ideas, right? So, but it's really hard to find even this one, right? So you can see here that this is not me saying it. This is some scientist, right? So you can see this was an interesting book. It was an introduction to the work of Stefan Odobleja, a Romanian founder of cybernetics. I thought that the affective lens analogy was relevant. I hate to say this, but the book reminds me of the Kabbalion, in that they both have a few universal principles that govern everything. However, the latter text is an occult book and it has been heavily criticized. The work of Dr. Odobleja, on the other hand, is clearly based in science. I appreciate the view that the mind depends on the physical body and the surrounding world. So basically, this reviewer here, and as well as many other scientists, and I will put some links if you want to read more about cybernetics, AI, and how this came about. And if you're interested in this book, I can also offer you the PDF format, which I found somewhere. Yeah, so the book that Odobleja wrote has a lot, like especially for his time, 1938, right? It wasn't clear writing. It's has schemes, has drawings, has looks a lot like an occult book, and it's thought a lot like an occult book. So many of the scientists are looking at it, and they're making the comparison, but they're, of course, because everybody looks down on the occult and the magic, and they call it mumbo jumbo, and they don't give it the same seriousness and the same attention that they would give to a scientific book, right? Everybody looks at science as being in stone, set in stone, and as ruling our world, almost like a new Bible sort of. But when you mention magic, the occult, and this kind of things, people just laugh at you, right? But here we are, from the mouth of the scientists themselves, saying that the two fields, right? The occult, the esoteric, the left hand path, and the science are actually have a very similar. They arrive to similar results by two different methods, right? So that's quite fascinating. I found it. So that's why I wanted to, right? That's why I wanted to kind of mention that, right? So yeah, so this book again is based on movement, and is based on attention, movement, psychology, many things like that, right? So that's why I included all these into this presentation to kind of like explain more, right? So I was talking about the Menads before, their dances, and how the shamans have to either go through a dance or they take drugs, and this is very common to many cultures, right? You have the Sufis dancing around, and this is done to I guess to either alter their consciousness, right? To basically end their dream state, right? So Sufis do that differently than the, let's say, I would say, the shamans, right? Or different than the Menads used to do it, right? The Menads used to dance and be frenzied and whatnot, right? So you have that in voodoo as well, right? So movement, dance, psychology, and the disorientation, right? So that's kind of like very, very close to what Stefano Dobleja was talking about, right? So So yeah, because the everything bridges this world with the other world. That's basically kind of basically the idea, right? So see, you can look to the evocation. It's talking about evocation here. Evocare means evocation, and as the book progresses, it gets he's got a few books actually. This is only I only found one and two, but there's many others that he wrote in his long career. But he died really poor, and nobody knows. I mean, nobody knew about him and then, and now became more and more known. So I'm just trying to kind of spread the word and to kind of uncover some of those things that people don't know about it in the West. So of course he was persecuted by the communists as always. The communists didn't like anybody that's smart. There wasn't a communist, right? So yeah, so that's unfortunately that's why people don't know about many of the people from the Balkans, the intellectuals, right? Is that it was they had the Ottoman Empire for 300 years, and then after the Ottoman Empire, the communism came. So there was no time for the West and the America, the England, so these countries to kind of collaborate with the Eastern Europe, right? So because of that, there's a lot of darkness. People don't know, right? So that's why I'm trying to shed some light on this. So yeah, so this is it's talking psychological, and as the book progresses, you see, it gets more and more psychic, and gets more and more trying to explain. And what's interesting about this guy, Stefan Odobleja, Stefan, right? Stefan is Stefan, is that his father couldn't read or write. He was illiterate, and it's fantastic how this guy came up with this as his son, and he studied, and he's now, of course, his famous schools are named after him and whatnot, and he's very well known. But he's not well known in the West just because of Robert Veen is claimed as the inventor of cybernetics, right? But he went even more scientific, more mathematical, more rather than Odobleja. Odobleja, his original was a lot more psychological. It's a lot more about the psyche and about, as you can see, right? And it almost looks like a magic book, right? It looks like an occult magic book, right? It doesn't look like, but it's like I said, it's a scientific book, right? But it's quite interesting. So yeah, it's a the cyber occult, right? I was talking about before, right? Virtual world and the occult, the nether world, the connection between our world and the other world, right? And this is seen in movies like The Matrix or Plato's Cave or Gnosticism, right? Or that the world is an illusion and the real world is somewhere else, right? It's this is idea, right? That you know Deus Ascondito, right? The hidden God. Uh, so the not only that, the virtual world, the internet brings about this ancient idea, right? Because you have the internet, you have the virtual, and you have the real, right? But also, uh, cybernetics, even though it's based on science, had an occult characteristics since its inception. So that's why I wanted to make this presentation to show that since this beginning, its original creation, cybernetics had a very occult characteristic, right? It's not completely scientific, right? Um so yeah, you can see here. This is parts of his book. This is almost reminds you of the Chaos Star, right? And these are very almost mathematics. He takes the thought processes and whatnot. He makes them into mathematics, right, and science. So it's mostly scientific, but it's very tinges into the occult, and it's interesting how that is. So anyway, this is my presentation, and hope you go and check the artworks online, and I'll put the link below. And yeah, and hope you enjoyed the presentation, and I'll put the other links in regards to Odobleja. If you are interested more, I can also offer you the book if you want. It's got about 20 megs, and I can maybe send it to Jeremy, but it's in Romanian. Unfortunately, I don't have any because it hasn't been translated. So you can probably translate it yourself with using like Google Translate or something for little words, because half of the book is just drawings anyway. So these are just little snippets that I chose just to. The book is much bigger, right? in the hundreds of pages, but I only have one and two. There's a lot more. There's about the original is like 800, but this is just it's just the just the most his best, so to speak, right? So anyway, thank you very much, and yeah, and hope you check out the gallery, and have a wonderful day. All the best. Bye bye.